Hello from Super Geeked. My name's Victoria, and I get super geeked about the mid-century era. It was the middle of the 20th century, 1945 to 1965. America was returning from World War II and played host to a suburban boom. It was a time of optimism and looking to the future, where the Kennedys were royalty and we raced for space. Also dubbed the Atomic Era, it was during this time that America ushered in one of its greatest design movements, mid-century modern. I have spent over 30 years studying and collecting mid-century treasures. I have a degree in history and a passion for researching everything from architecture and furniture to fashion and collectibles from the era. I am excited to share with you my collection of everything mid-century and impart what I know about this season in our history. Today we're going to talk about glassware, specifically about Anchor Hocking's brand of fireproof glass called Fire King. You may have heard of the most popular colorway from this design line called Jade-ite. Even Martha Stewart has a massive collection of Jade-ite. So today I'm going to share with you the history of some of these patterns under the Fire King line, and then share with you pieces from my personal collection as we go through a summarized tour of this special line from Anchor Hocking. Fire King was produced by Anchor Hocking in Lancaster, Ohio from 1942 to 1976. What made these dishes different than other glassware being produced by Anchor Hocking was that they were formulated with heat-proof glass, which was so durable it was guaranteed against breakage due to heat for 2 years. However, these pieces have proved so durable that they have lasted generations. This line is also easily identifiable as 90% of the pieces are embossed with the Fire King logo, with only 10% having labels attached instead of the permanent embossing. Made in beautiful colors, the most popular of the Fire King line were Jade-ite, Ivory, Royal Ruby, Forest Green, Azurite, Milk White, and Turquoise Blue. Fire King was truly a pattern of glassware with a style of its own, and will continue to represent a large portion of the next generation of collectible glassware. During the mid-century era, Fire King was one of the least expensive lines available on the market, making them a popular line with housewives all across America. Another mainstream way to get dishes instead of outright purchasing them was by buying products at your local grocery store. These were called premiums and given as premiums for purchasing a brand of products, ranging from flour and oats to bubblegum. That's right, you could get dishes by purchasing bubblegum. This was not a new invention in America, as premiums were commonplace since the 1920s, with what we now know as Depression glass. During the Depression, when it was hard for housewives to go out and purchase dishes, sellers or manufacturers would offer a free gift with purchase of a certain dollar amount of goods or a specific product. And penny pinching ladies of the time took full advantage of these freebies. Glass was plucked from an oatmeal box 1 week and then from a detergent box the next. Sometimes gas stations would throw in a punch bowl and matching set of cups with an oil change. Movie theaters even got in on the action, offering a piece of glass with a ticket to a Saturday matinee. You may even hear old-timers refer to some of these pieces as oatmeal glass due to their origin. This continued to be the case well into the mid-century era. And now we are going to get into the different lines of Fire King. In this video, I'm going to tell you the name that collectors refer to these items as. It may not have been their official name, as Anchor Hocking tended to label each of the designs with a number system. So I will also give you the number that Anchor Hocking used to identify these different patterns. There is no way that I could possibly go over every style and pattern that existed in the Fire King line. This video serves merely as a highlight to share with you my collection and with a general knowledge of Fire King collectibles, so that when you're out on the hunt, you know what to look for. It also serves to show you the resale value should you decide to become a dealer of mid-century glassware. As a longtime collector, I highly recommend, as you get into collecting, that you purchase reference books. Be sure to note that there are so many wonderful reference books out there, either written by the manufacturers themselves or by collectors. And just to note, unofficial collectors' guides are often written by avid collectors who have long-time knowledge, like me, but there can be mistakes. In making this video, I found several mistakes in some of my reference books for Fire King. So do your own research. Don't just use one source. I also highly recommend bookmarking this video on YouTube to use as a reference as you start to look for Fire King. It may prove to assist you in identifying your pieces and the history behind them. All right, y'all, so I am going to start off with some of the most collectible. This is Jade-ite. So if you haven't seen Jade-ite, this is the colorway that I was talking about before that Martha Stewart collects and is the most popular of the Fire King line. If you're a new collector, you may have thought that Jade-ite was actually the line from Fire King, but it's just a colorway. So you'll find that the Jade-ite color is actually in several different patterns within the Fire King brand. But again, it is by far the most collectible of all Fire King. So that's where we'll start our tour. First up is the Jane Ray G3800 line, which was produced from 1945 to 1963. Production of the Jane Ray line began in 1945 at a time when it was the only heat-proof made in the attractive jade color, or as collectors call it, Jade-ite, or G3800. If you're interested in starting to collect Jade-ite, the Jane Ray line is an excellent place to start, with the exception of a few pieces, like a sugar bowl with a lid or a flanged bowl. These pieces are pretty easy to find. With most patterns that you'll see in Fire King, bowls are more scarce as they were given away as premiums, with purchase of town crier flower. It's easy to recognize as it has a rib design molded into the outer edge. It actually came in two shades of jade. This is the lighter jade color, which is the older of the line. And it has a deeply ribbed line. And then later on, there was a darker jade color that had a more shallow ribbing. And then here is the plate from the Jane Ray line. The 1700 line from Fire King is the oldest tableware set to carry the Fire King trademark. Using the 1700 line molds, they came in both ivory, which was W1700, and Jade-ite, which was G1700. These same molds were used to make royal ruby tableware of the early 1940s. They have a flat design look with no design embossed. And here is the Fire King logo on the bottom. This is in the Jade-ite color, and it's just plain, but this is for sauces. It has a little pour spout and just the plain handle. But this is one of the oldest of the Fire King line. These Jade-ite and ivory 400 line ovenware pieces were made in the same style as Fire King's sapphire blue line, but without an embossed design on the outside. These Jade-ite colored 400 line ovenware pieces are ultra rare and hard to find. So I feel very fortunate to have a piece of the ovenware. In the early 1950s, Anchor Hocking's Fire King went on to create an ivory white version of the 400 mold ovenware. They used a crystal ovenware mold to create these. And because of that, the Fire King logo is actually backwards. So it's embossed on there backwards because of the mold they used. So this is the early 1950s ivory white ovenware from the 400 line. So this is the older Jade-ite, and this is the ivory white that came later. but they're the same line. Next up, we're going to talk about the bowl you saw earlier. This is called the Swirl Mixing Bowl and was produced from 1949 to 1972. So Anchor Hocking actually refers to these bowls by their color name and not by the swirl. But we're going to call them the Swirl Mixing Bowls because that is what the majority of collectors of Fire King will call this bowl. These bowls came in Jade-ite starting in 1945, Anchor White and Ivory in 1950, and Luster, which had a iridescent sheen to it, in 1951. In 1966, Anchor Hocking introduced a set called Rainbow, which consisted of 4 fired-on colors: sandalwood, turquoise, yellow, and coral. The rainbow line is ultra rare. Because of the Swirl Mixing Bowl's long production, you will see almost every Anchor Hocking trademark on these bowls. So here is the logo on the bottom of my Swirl Mixing Bowl. This is obviously in Jade-ite. These would come in 4 bowl sets. So I just have the large bowl. This actually was a wedding gift to my grandparents, and this is the only bowl that's left. I also have the Swirl Bowl in Ivory, and it has the same trademark as the Jade-ite that I have just showed you. And just so you can see, this is one of the smaller nesting mixing bowls in the swirl pattern, and also in the Ivory. Also in my collection, and produced between 1950 and 1970, I have one of the batter bowls that would match the mixing bowls. The Jade-ite is actually listed as W655. And then also in this set were, with the mixing bowls, would be the batter bowls like I showed you, and then also refrigerator jars. And if you don't know what a refrigerator jar is, it is the precursor to today's Tupperware, but they were actually made of glass. Now, this is not a Fire King, or if it is a Fire King, it is not marked Fire King, but it is very much in the style of what the Fire King refrigerator jars look like. We own a bunch of Pyrex refrigerator dishes, but this is the only one that I have that is not Pyrex. As you can see, it has a glass lid. Mine actually says Balkan yogurt maker, but it has the clear glass on top and then the milk glass. And this would be the white version. And it is also embossed on the bottom with the yogurt brand. But just to show you what the refrigerator dishes look like from that time period. I also want to mention that Jade-ite had a line of restaurant ware. If you're not familiar with what restaurant ware was dishes that were made in a heavier consistency. They had more weight to them, they were thicker, and that was so that they would stand the test of time in a restaurant environment where they were being used constantly and washed and reused. The Jade-ite restaurant ware G200 and G300 from 1948 to 1974 started in the 1940s. They are one of Fire King's longest running, top selling lines of all time. Okay, moving away from the Jade-ite and other colorways of ovenware and dishes, we're going to talk about pressed glass. This line we call the Early American Prescut, produced from 1960 to 1978. The largest and longest running patterns of glass to be produced during the Fire King era of Anchor Hocking. These are not oven proof, but have proved quite durable and well received by millions of customers who bought it over the years. You've probably seen it out in the wild, and this is the design. Prescut is a compound word to describe the glass. Press describe the pressed glass molding method used in production. And the cut describes the pattern style being an old cut glass pattern with 8 and 10 pointed stars. There have been colored glass versions of the Prescut, but the majority are in the clear glass. Most of this series went through 1978, with some being produced after. The 8.5-inch base of this pattern was actually used into modern day. And if you've ever been to an estate sale, you probably have seen some Prescut. I see it everywhere. I personally own a lot of pieces of the clear glass, but because you see it everywhere, there is the opportunity for knockoffs. So unless you find one with the sticker still on it, The only way to really tell is by the weight of the glass and if it's a good quality glass. This piece that I showed you is a tray. I own several of these, use them all the time for hosting. And then just to show you a little diversity, this is the creamer and sugar set. So it has the creamer with the same star pattern, and it has the sugar bowl with lid. Here it is up close. And then it has the little tray that goes with it. So next stop on our tour, Primrose W4600 62 line from 1960 to 1962. I do not own any Primrose in my collection anymore, but I wanted to talk about this because this is one of the sets that I find regularly and resell. So it's a pattern you may find out on the hunt too. The Primrose pattern is one of Fire King's floral designs. Anchor Hocking introduced in the late 1950s. Not only did this pattern of tableware have 2 sets of glasses, but also candle warmers, a complete set of ovenware, a snack set, and salt and pepper shakers. They have a large cluster of red flowers with gray leaves and black stems on milk white Fire King glassware. Of this set, the shakers and tumblers and mugs are the hardest to find. Next on our tour, we have the Candle-Glo ovenware, W473, from 1967 to 1972. The advertisements read, "Dinner by Candle-Glo. Whip up a casserole or cook up some ham and whisk it to the table." This beautiful ovenware pattern is just what the modern homemaker needed. The anchor white color with alternating blue and gold candles on the side, turned down handles, and white knob tops quickly became a bestseller with a production run of 5 years. It is safe for ovens, microwaves, and dishwashers. They are still practical to collect and use in your modern kitchen. And here is the Fire King logo on the bottom. Another set that I don't own but wanted to mention because I do find it out in the wild a lot is the W400 mixing bowls with patterns. These were produced from 1968 to 1978. The pattern that I specifically see a lot of is the Dutch clover, and I have bought and sold it many times over the years. These bowls are slightly tapered with a squared off bottom, and they came in 10 sets of 3 or 4 bowls. Now these dishes were produced after technically the mid-century era, getting into the later 60s and early 70s, where they would fit smashingly into avocado and harvest gold kitchens. That were the trend as we moved out of the mid-century era. Now we're on to my absolute favorite from my Fire King collection. Long stumping collectors, because there was little information, were bakeware sets that were often mistaken as Pyrex, but they were actually Fire King bakeware. It was so confusing because these bakeware dishes had patterns that matched mid-century China patterns from the era. Some were marked Fire King, but the majority of them were not, with the exception of a number on the bottom naming the mold. Later, collectors found out that Anchor Hocking, in an effort to have an advantage over other competitors, teamed up with the companies making this china in their kitschy patterns to have complementary bakeware to match, which makes sense because if you're a mid-century housewife and you're hosting, you want your dishes to match your bakeware that you're taking straight from the oven to your table. And so the following line was born with companies like Royal China, Stetson, and Taylor Smith Taylor. Eventually, after having the partnership in 1971, Anchor Hocking would go on to purchase Taylor Smith Taylor. But if you're a mid-century modern nut, you know this pattern. This is Blue Heaven. Blue Heaven was a china pattern put out by Royal China, and it is one of the most collected mid-century modern china patterns on the market. Well, these Blue Heaven patterned Anchor Hocking, Fire King ovenware dishes are very rare, and I have a lot. So they're my favorites. This is the large mixing bowl that has the turn down spouts. You can use them to pour, and you can use them as handles. As you can see, there's no Fire King marking on the bottom, but this one does have a faint number 5. This is the smaller version of this bowl. So you can see the difference. And these would come as a set of 4 nesting bowls. I actually have a couple in this size and then this size. And so I need to get some more in the alternating sizes. The mold number on this size was a 7. I also have the small custard dishes, and the pattern is on both sides, by the way. This mold number is 13. I have the loaf baking dish, which actually has no pattern number on the bottom. I have the square dish. It's a rather large square dish. And again, no pattern number. And I also have the round one. So this is the round baking dish. And again, no markings on the bottom of this one. So these are definitely my favorites of my Fire King collection. And when you talk about value, these are more rare, so they're definitely gonna get you a pretty penny, especially if you can find them with the lids. 2 other designs from this collaboration were Swiss Alpine Chalet by Stetson, Currier and Ives, and a Taylor Smith Taylor design that I actually just recently rescued from the bins when we went on a trip to the Goodwill outlet in Mobile. This saucer, which would have had a matching cup, was one of those premiums offered with purchase of old-fashioned Mother's Oats, where the pattern is called Bonnie Blue. However, Taylor Smith Taylor called their china of this pattern Ever Yours Boutonniere, and it was produced in the 1960s. Both by Taylor Smith Taylor and the Fire King baking ones by Anchor Hocking. These are some sets that I would love to find that are a little more rare and hard to find in the wild that are from the Fire King line from Anchor Hocking. The first is the Swedish Modern mixing bowls, or by collectors known as Teardrop. It was produced between 1956 and 1958. Ultra rare, the Swedish Modern or Teardrop mixing bowl sets were introduced in 1956 in the colors Jade-ite, Turquoise, and Anchor White. Another line is the Kernel Rim range sets from 1960 to 1962. In the early 1960s, the Stripes range was introduced. The set was made in milk white with yellow, turquoise, and coral stripes. Also in the range sets were a splash-proof version from 1953 to 1960. In the early 1950s, Anchor Hocking introduced several new range sets in milk white and ivory with painted designs. These came in 4-piece sets of mixing bowls in tapered, splash-proof styles. The patterns were tulips, 1953 to 1958, apples, 1957, black dots, 1955, red dots, 1955 to 56, modern tulips, 1959 to 1960, and kitchen aids, 1959. Moving on, we're going to talk about novelty mugs and bowl sets. Most single mugs from this time period came with a matching bowl. It was very popular to get a bowl and mug set. One of these mug and bowl sets, and one that I collect, is the Kimberly Mug that had an ombre effect from dark to light or light to dark and a diamond pattern. You probably have seen these mugs recently on our Instagram, the Super Geeked, because I purchased them from a fellow reseller and friend, Heroin Bob, over at Bob Buys. And here is the Anchor Hocking logo on the bottom. Also, in the novelty mug category were printed mugs. It all started in the 1950s with Davy Crockett mug and bowl sets. Later came Superman, Batman, and Robin. Snoopy was also a popular set. Then came advertising mugs. You may be familiar with the McDonald's mugs, but there were so many more. Everything from banks to gas stations. These novelty mugs are fun to collect and vary in value. So keep your eye out next time you're on the hunt. I also want to mention a set that I used to collect, but that I sold that you probably have seen out and about, and they are gift sets. They came in relish dishes and egg plates in several different colors and styles. Most notably are the white with the 22 karat gold trim that are most readily available. However, they also came in turquoise, white, and a peach luster. And last, what I wanted to share with you were snack sets. Snack sets were very popular during the mid-century period as housewives would play host in their homes. I have several collections of snack sets, but my most prized are in a design called Vintage. Vintage, also known by Anchor Hocking as 600, was produced between 1965 and 1978. And the reason why it's most special to me is, it's going to be hard to pick up. I have 2 large boxes, so they are in the original box, and they just say serve a snack set, Anchor glass, and sparkling crystal, which would be the clear, as we've learned in this video. And it says up here the design pattern says Vintage Design, and you can see the Anchor Hocking logo right here, along with our little housewife in the middle serving on it. I'm going to flip it over to show you the back. It says Anchor Hocking Glass Corporation, Lancaster, Ohio. And now let me show you what's inside. So you pop the top, and inside are 4 glasses with a tray. I actually have 2 of these, and I got these when my grandmother passed away. They actually come with extra plates in case they get broken, but this is the Vintage design, and you can see the grapes on it. And these are the little glasses. And on the plate is a little circle where you, with a rim, where you actually place the glass so you can serve your guest their little drink and snack set. As I said before, this video can't be all-inclusive because there were so very many lines within the Fire King era of Anchor Hocking, but I hope that you enjoyed this little overview. I do want to show you some comps of some of the patterns that I showed you throughout this video. Now keep in mind, each pattern within the Fire King line of Anchor Hocking are going to have pieces that are more valuable than the next. You may have a large Jade-ite mixing bowl with a smaller Jade-ite mixing bowl, and one of them may be more rare and hard to find. Maybe they were more used, so there are fewer out there because more were broken. Or maybe it's part of a set that had a lid, that the lids are hard to find. So it's going to very much depend on each line within Anchor Hocking and then each individual piece. Now, that may sound overwhelming, but just like we do any time that we are going to be selling something, we look at comps. So don't get discouraged. I also, like I said before, encourage you, if you're going to get into collecting or dealing in mid-century glassware, to definitely buy resource books. They will help you immensely determine what pattern you have, what line they're from, and help you decide on what to list the items for or what to pay for them. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm very excited to be doing this mid-century series with you, and I hope that this Fire King video was a good start and you enjoyed it and got a lot of information out of it. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to interact with anybody and everybody that messages me. If you haven't already, make sure you do those YouTube-y things, subscribe, hit the like button, and again, don't forget to bookmark this video because it may be handy in the future. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.